Dr. Purvi Pokhariyal in today's session. Professor Pokhariyal is a distinguished academician and legal professional, currently serving as the Dean of the School of Law, Forensic Justice and Policy Studies, and as the Director of the Lok Nayak Jai Prakash Narayan Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science, National Forensic Science University, Delhi campus. She also holds the position of Director, Academic Research and Consultancy at NFSU. Madam has been awarded with Senior Social Scientist Award from the Indian Society of Criminology, the Best Law Professor Award from the Business School Affairs, Devang Mehta National Education Award, and the Wonder Woman Award by Times Group in March 2020. So thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and giving us your valuable time. Once again, I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of Department of Law, Arts and Science, School of Law, Manipal University, Jaipur, and Law Teachers India. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I really compliment the organizer to think through about this program, empowering change through this executive development program. So my heartiest compliments to the organizer, because these kind of discussions and deliberation is something which is grossly missing from the mainstream education dialogue. So this is something which is quite admirable task. So I'm going to discuss about gender equity and equality in the higher education. So basically focusing on SDG 5, as we all know. So when we talk about gender equity and equality in higher education per se, we also first discuss about the gender equality and equity in general parlance, because at the end of the day, once we achieve some amount of gender parity in the other streams of life, then one of the aspects of life and livelihood is something which is the education program. So I just would like to start with the understanding of gender. What do we really mean by gender? So if you look at the OECD definition, the OECD has given this definition quite long back. If we can go to the next slide, we'll get this definition. That definition was given in the year 1998. And what OECD has said, which is an international document, it says that gender refers to the economic, social, political, and cultural attributes and opportunities associated being a male or a female. So when we talk about the gender, as I said, gender is a social construct. It's not a natural phenomena. It's a social construct, and this is how which we look at it, what it means to be a male or a female, or now even the transgender, anything else. And so what it means, what are the opportunities, what are the attributes that we would like to accord to being a male or a female, and that kind of an attributes and opportunities that varies from culture to culture, and that is something which is very dynamic, very pragmatic, and which changes over a period of time. So as I said, gender is a social construct. There is nothing to do. That's what we need to remember. Simone de Beauvoir, when she talks about the gender and sex in his a very celebrated and a very celebrated work, which is known as Second Sex, in which she very very carefully discusses that how gender being a social construct is affecting various cultural, social, economic, and political phenomena. And this is how and now when we talk about in India and many parts of the world, gender is not restricted only up to the male and female. If you look at some of the foreign universities application form, the admission application form, and then when you look at the drop down menu, when we ask the gender, is not male females. Now if you look at in India, it is male, females, and others. But if you look at some of the applications from in some of the foreign university, the drop down menu goes up to 25 different genders. So that's what my point over here is, that now that definitions of gender and the understanding of the gender in terms of the social construction has expanded so dramatically. Earlier, when we used to have only two genders, now we have around 25 sets of phenomena of gender that what prevalent in today's world. So with reference to the today's discussion, my of course my discussion would be restricted to a male and female. We are not talking about any other gender construct over here, so that the things becomes very I mean the discussions and the thought remains streamlined. So now, after understanding the gender, we also need to understand gender equity and gender equality, because when SDG 5 talks about gender equality, what do we really understand by gender equity and equality? So if you go to the next slide, it says that when we talk about equity, it is a process of being fair to women and men, including using measures to compensate for historical and social disadvantages that prevent man and women from operating on a level playing field. So we are just trying to create an ecosystem. There are two different genders, two different sex, and how do we create a level playing field, and creating some kind of an equilibrium, so that their disadvantages which they have generated either through historical incidents or through the social positioning, their disadvantages may be minimized, and we may create a level playing field so that they both equally participate in the process of growth and development. So that is what we know as gender equity. When we talk about gender equality, basically, as we all know, we have Article 14, we have Article 15 subclause 1 of the Constitution, 15 subclause 2, and especially the 15 subclause 3, which empowers the government to make a special laws for women and children. So basically, this 15.3 is not gender equality. 15.3, when the state is empowered to make a special legislation for the protection of the rights of the women and children, it's basically the process of gender equity. We are trying to create a level playing field. So when we talk about gender equality, which is a part of Article 14, it talks about state or a condition that affords women and men an equal enjoyment of human rights, socially valued goods, opportunities, and resources. So when we talk about equality, is all about accepting and denotion of the all kind of rights and privileges equally, rights, privileges, opportunities, and resources. So there is a difference between equality and equity. Equity, we are trying not to remain just equal, but trying to make a level playing field by walking an extra miles. Wherein gender equality, we are trying to create an equal set of rights. So what we are basically SDG 5 talk about, ultimately it's not only gender equality, ultimate goal is gender equity. So how do we go about it? What are the impediments? So if you look at the SDG 5, there are a certain parameters. If you go to the next slides, when we talk about gender equality, SDG 5 talks about 5 parameters. The first is ending gender based violence and exploitation, promoting equal participation in political, economic, and public life, ensuring access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, recognizing and valuing unpaid domestic work. This is something which is very interesting for us, especially in the Indian context, and enhancing women's use of enabling technology. So these are the 5 parameters which are being enlisted under SDG 5. Now, all the parameters are fully engaged with the topic that we are going to discuss today. That is the SDG 5. We are trying to focus with reference to the education sector, and again specifically
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Madam got disconnected.
Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
madam,
sir.
we lost you for last 10 seconds, 10, 15
Oh,
seconds.
okay, okay. So, yeah, to what I was talking about, the education is a humanizing process. Education is shaping the future leaders. Education is the most influencing process, because if you talk about the higher education sector, everyone generally enters the higher education sector at the very formative years of their life. Once they are at the age of 17, 18, 19, they generally step into the higher education segment. And these age group of 18 to 23, 18 to 25 is the most influential, impressionable age. And at that point in time, whatever we interact with them, whatever we do and engage with them, that greatly influence and shape their personality. And this is how we are shaping the humankind. I'm not using the word mankind very consciously, though UDHR discuss about the mankind, it's always the humankind. So basically, education, I mean to say that education sector is quite influencing sector, and it has a great impact on entire social change and social transformation process as well. And when we talk about the higher education sector, at that point in time, uh, bringing the equality requires tackling the issues of gender disparities in faculty, tackling the issues of gender disparity in disbursing the research fund and the student participation. And how do we create an inclusive environment and implement policies against discrimination and support gender diversity? So these are some of the initiatives when we talk about gender equality in the higher education sector. So what I'm going to discuss in this today's discussion, I'm going to discuss the strategies that address the gender-based biases in academia. We can also discuss some of the case studies, and we will also discuss some of the statistics. The statistics is very, very disturbing statistics that we got through, specifically in the Indian context, and also in the global context. Also, the statistics is very disturbing, very alarming. So we will discuss, and then further we may take a path forward. So moving to the next slide, if you see, when we talk about the SDG 5, as I said, there are 5 performance of indicators. So for the ending of discrimination, we need to have a legal framework. So what are the legal framework we have? Yes, we have a legal framework in terms of the protection of fundamental rights under Part 14, under 15.1, 15.2, 15.3, and then Equal Remuneration Act we have. We have certain kind of a legal structures in the legal framework when it comes to the end of discrimination. When we talk about second parameters of gender equality, eliminate violence. So when we talk about violence, is all about the partner violence, the intimate partner violence, violence by the family members, violence, so all the domestic violence and non-partner violence. When we talk about violence over here, it also includes everything which Domestic Violence Act covers: the physical abuse, mental abuse, economic exploitation. So even the economic exploitation by the employer falls within the ambit of the non-partner violence. So all these things we do have some kind of a legal framework. When we talk about eliminate harmful practices, all kind of an issues that is being enlisted over here with reference to early marriage, female genital mutilation, and the witch hunting, and there are so many such kind of superstitions practices, and for that we have some kind of a legal framework that we are having as of now, but we need to work much harder on this. Then the fourth target for the gender equality is the recognized unpaid care work. Now, this is something which is very interesting phenomena, because the one prediction as per the World Economic Forum, the care work is going to grow by another 40% in next 20 years to come. The all kind of a care work. So care work, when I say, is all about the nursing and all kind of that counseling, mentoring, nursing. And that's the reason that if you see, even today, the primary teachers, the pre-primary teachers who teaches in the in the kindergarten and senior KG and in standard 1 to 5, if you look at the total statistics of these segment, there are, I mean, this segment is overcrowding with the female. Almost one survey says that 87% of the pre-primary teachers and the primary teachers here, I mean to say, up to the elementary education, up to fifth standard or so, they all, I mean, that particular segment, 87% is filled by the female teachers. So the care work is going to grow. All the domestic homework is also going to grow. So at that juncture, I would say that the recognition of these unpaid care work. So the rest of the care work is getting definitely paid, but the unpaid care work, some law that we need to. Yeah. So I was just talking about the various targets and indicators of progress that is being designed by the UN, United Nations General Assembly, with reference to Goal 5. Uh, the same way, like full participation in leadership, which has great connotation with the topic that we are discussing today, the women leadership and women participation in the higher education system. Now, in this context, we also have to see the, we have so many such kind of decisions with reference to the women reservation in the parliamentary, in the women reservation in all these parliamentary positions. We also have seen the special provisions of the women director under the Companies Act. So there has been greater amount of what you call initiations taken through the legislations or through the policy, through some kind of a policy, to ensure that the decision making process is getting also equally participated by all the females. And then, of course, access to reproductive rights, wherein the reproductive decisions is something which is to be taken exclusively by the female, because ultimately it is the female's body. So there are so much of movement that is going on with reference to the reproductive rights as well, which also falls within the ambit of one of the target of SDG 5. And the equal economic resources, we are aware that when it comes to the land ownership, you know the land ownership, not only in India but worldwide, there are only 6.3% of the land that is being owned by the female. So in that context, how do we increase the land ownership? There are some kind of an initiative that, if the house or a property is being registered in the name of a female, then there is some kind of a stamp duty exemption. There is a registration fee is getting subsidized in some of the states. So likewise, some kind of an initiations has already been done. And when it talks about the empowerment through technology, so the how many because ultimately when we talk about technology today, the first thing that comes into our mind is that the ownership of a mobile and access to internet, because once access to internet is now equivalent to become the right to education, because internet is a greater amount of resource to make oneself aware about his rights, responsibilities, duties. And it's something which is a window to the world. So that's the reason that not only the mobile phone, with for the access of to have an access to the world, through the world view, but also as an education resources. And then policies for equality is something which is the common thread for all the targets. So these are something which is already being jotted down by the United Nations. And then every year, all the indicators are getting mapped and measured. And these indicators are now getting reported as an annual report on SDG. If you can, if you some of you are interested, can go through the SDG report 2023 and look at the performance of India in all the parameters, and then you'll come to know that it's quite disturbing. If you move to the next slide, what are the factors that really impact the gender equality in the higher education? So of course, the law and policy is something which should be an enabler, which should be encouraging, which should something which promote more participation of women in the higher education sector. Sensitization for that requires sensitization, intersectionality, representation and visibility, the kind of a recognitions and reward that is to be given, that further motivates the other female to come and join the league. And of course, when we talk about the social change, the modernization and urbanization is one of the most important factor, and I would say the parameters to 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 ensure that women participation is being guaranteed. So that is how, if you look at the urban area and the semi-urban area, where the more female are there, which are into the work sector, in compared to the rural area. So modernization and urbanization process really helps to boost this factor of gender equality. That's what we really want to emphasize over here. What are the potential challenges? If you go to the next slide, there are some of the challenges with reference to the gender equality in higher education. So, first of all, under representation of female in the STEM fields. When we talk about the male female student ratio in the engineering uh, profession, this is something which is quite unequal, because in the STEM field, the science, technology, and mathematics, in this field generally we have seen the enrollment ratio of the female is quite low. So so those, all the jobs and all the work front and all the institutions which has a STEM area, naturally when there is no enrollment of a female in this field in a greater number, naturally the representation in the higher education institution would also be low. Then another These are some of the factors, but another most important factor which I would like to highlight over here is that the access to education for a girl child. If you look at this RTE Act and the implementation of the RTE Act and the dropout of those children, despite of having a very monitored implementation of the RTE Act, if you see, the dropout ratio of a girl child is much higher than a boy, than the boy child. So once they are not able to go through this ladder up, how they are going to ensure their participation in the fullest way in the higher education segment? So that is also you have to see. Some of the alarming statistics, not only in India but globally, I would like to share in the next slide. So if you go to the next slide, it says that according to the World Economic Forum, the Global Gender Gap Report, that is, this kind of report is being published every year. The Global Gender Gap Report, it takes that it will take another 135 years to close the gender gap worldwide, because the gender gap in each country varies. But then if you putting together all the countries together in a world way, so it will take another 135 years. As for the UNESCO Institute for the Statistics, women make up only about 28% of the workforce in STEM worldwide. This is not an Indian statistics, it's a worldwide statistics. If you look at women academic positions, often face significant pay gaps in compared to their male counterpart, and especially in the United States, they consider itself with the most progressive and the highly deep rooted democratic fabric they have. They claim that they have a deep rooted democratic fabric. Despite of this situation, in United States, the female professor earn approximately 81% of the male professors really earn. So there is a gap in their earning as well. Same way in the European Commission. As for the European Commission, it says that women are underrepresented in the leadership role within the academic institutions, because in European universities, there are only 24% of the women who are the full professors. And if you read the World Bank report, uh, the report name is the missed opportunities, the high cost of the not educating girls. It says that globally, girls are more likely to drop out school than the boys, with rates as high as 37% in the lower income groups. So, everything starts from the scratch. Everything starts with the roots. If we are not able to take care of these segment, how we are going to ensure the equity at the upper segment? So if you move to the next slide, it says that what are the things that we can do with reference to the gender equity in the higher education institutions. We have so many instruments internationally available on these. We have a UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in the Education. We have Convention of that is CEDAW, we all know. We have a Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of 1995, which also covers some amount of women gender equality in general and in one point in the higher education institution as well. We have an Istanbul Convention of 2011. We have ILO Convention. We have MDG, Millennium Development Goal, SDG. So despite of having various programs, various conventions, various declarations, still the situation is something which is very, very disturbing according to me. If you move to the next slide, it will talk about the international instruments that really advocates the gender equity in the higher education institutions. That because when we talk about CRC, though it talks about the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the CRC also specifically emphasizes on certain issues with reference to the girl's child. Likewise, the Decker framework of action is something also which talks about how the female participation can be ensured in the education sphere. So my point, I'm not discussing all these things in detail due to the want of time, but my point over here is that there are number of instruments which are available, number of programs which are already launched, but still the issue is not, I mean, the result is not very encouraging. If you go to the next slide, when we talk about the gender equality, we need to have a law and policy support. Every country has some amount, I mean, some or the other kind of a law, legislations or the policies. Like United States, we have the law. India, we have an act. Australia, we have an act. All these legislation basically minimize and prevent the gender discrimination. But we also have the gender discrimination framework, legal framework, the constitutional framework, the special provisions, but still the result is, as I said, is not very encouraging. If you go to the next slide, it will talk about the SDG implementation under international regime on gender equality. so so these are the special program. Specifically, if you talk about why we need to have a global gender gap report. The global gender gap report specifically is released by the World Economic Forum for all the member nation to introspect and reflect upon their policies and the framework, that how they are lagging behind, and that gives them the the opportunity to reflect upon their ideas. And that's the reason that this report provides the data and benchmark for measuring the gender equality. And specifically, it also talks about the progress in the education sector. Likewise, UN Women, United Nations Women Global Program on Gender Equality in Education, which also talks on focuses on the enhancing of the women's and girls' access to quality rights. Uh, UNESCO's chair program is also something which specially supports the research and capacity building on capacity building activities to promote gender equality in education. So these are some of the initiatives that has already been taken. Now, if you look at India, I was just trying to look at the statistics. Unfortunately, we do not have. If you go to the next slide, what are the issues with the Indian scenario? First and foremost is the patriarchal culture. So many other countries do have a patriarchal culture, but our patriarchal culture is probably deep rooted, and still we are not able to come out of these clutches of the patriarchal norms. Then the education divide or barriers, the education divide in rural urban, education divide of language barrier. So there are so many such kind of a divide that exists in the education sector. When it comes to the violence, gender-based violence, the score is very, very high. The index of gender-based violence for India is very, very high. And these violence is affecting a girl child to attend the school. So it has a very it has is a very consequential impact on the other development aspects of a girl child: economic disempowerment, and the community mobilization and advocacy. The kind of mobilization of the resources and the community initiatives and community resources that is required for the country like India is not yet being fully materialized. We have so many civil society groups, so many champions of gender rights, but still the efforts are not adequate enough. So if you go to the next slide, it talks about status of women in India. We have gender relationships, we have exclusion and discrimination, we have ethnic discrimination, geographical exclusion, cultural discrimination. So we, in various forms, we have seen women are the part of this circle. Each woman in India is a part of one or the other circles in this particular picture. Now, if you talk about the legal framework, as I said, we have so many laws. If you go to the next slide, we have so many laws. We have constitution and all this special legislation with reference to the legal framework for the gender equality in India. Recently, some of you may be already aware, the UGC has also asked to promote the gender equality in the schools and colleges. They have initiated the scheme of gender champions, the special gender championship. Not only this, but if you look at few years back, there was a scheme of the institution of eminence, which the government was supposed to declare 10 private and 10 public universities to be declared as an institution of eminence, and that they've given a framework of the institution of eminence, and then you have to reply. And and then, as you are aware, that some of the public and some private universities are already declared as an institution of eminence. In one of the most important criteria in the institution of eminence was to have 50% of the female as a leadership in the leadership role. Leadership role here mean to be either principal, HOD, deans, or any other leadership role. That was one of the criteria for declaring the university as an institution of eminence. So there are so many such kind of an initiative. Sakshat portal by the Ministry of Education is a recent example for this thing, which is being taken to ensure the female participation can be further enhanced. If you go to the next slide, it will talk about the Aisha survey. Now, this is something which I know this is a survey of 2021-22. I couldn't find the survey of the latest survey, but if you look at this data, the female enrollment in higher education, that was there 2.0%, 2.07 crore in 24-25. That has increased 32%. But then this 2.07 crore female enrollment is nothing in terms of the entire 1.4 billion population, if you look at it. The female PhD enrollment has also doubled, yes, but then doubled, but in terms of total, what was there in 24 and 15 was 0.48 lakh. Now it has reached to 4.99 lakhs. If you look at the total enrollment of these female students in the STEM for UG, PG, PhD, and MPhil level is 98.5 lakhs. And then in science stream, the female have outnumbered the males. So this is something which has the recent phenomenon. The last 5 years, last 5 to 6 years, we have seen that females are outnumbering the males in STEM stream. So this is something which is much better in compared to the US and UK. If you compare the figures of the female enrollment ratio in STEM, India is much higher than the counterpart whom we consider, I mean, as of now, the US and UK. Now, if you look at this female ratio of the working women in higher education institution, then in 2021 is 15.98 lakh teachers, of which about 56.6 are males and 43.3 are females. So there also
So yes, sorry, participant, we lost the connection. Anyone lost the connection? Yeah, just wait for a while. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
audible. Hello,
Yes, yes, ma'am, we lost you for last 10
hello,
seconds. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
hello,
Yes, yes, ma'am, you're audible now.
hello, hello.
You're audible, ma'am.
Oh, okay, okay. So this is the statistics. Now, if you look at this thing in the higher position, so as per recent in the sense before 2 years, I think in 2020 there was one survey. It says that out of almost 725 universities, which was prevalent figure in 2020, out of 70 in from among the 725 universities, there are only 13 universities which has a female vice chancellor. Only 13 universities. That comprises of 1.8% of the total this thing. And then again, if you look at these 13 VCs, 13 female VCs, there were only, from amongst these 13 also, there were 6 universities which is a only women university. So naturally, when there is an exclusive women university, they're going to have a female vice chancellor. So if you consider that statistics, out of 725 universities, only 7 universities were having a female vice chancellor. Not only this, if you consider all the higher education institutions in the year 2020, putting together all the colleges and the other autonomous bodies, there were 810 autonomous body. From amongst this 810 autonomous body, only 54 organization, 54 higher education institution had a female principal or HOD or a dean or a director, whatever you call, that comprises of only 6.7%. There are 73 institutions of national importance in this country, 73. From these 73 INIs, only 4 INIs has a female directors or the female heads, that comprises of only 5.4%. So that really make us to think that where are we heading, how we are going to meet our target of gender equality by 2030, because when we talk about SDG goals which we have to achieve by 2030. So this is what I wanted to discuss. I mean, DU has not had any female vice chancellor even on the date. Can you go to the next slide? So when we talk about these gender development SDG 5, what we are required, we require that the we need to have more participation in political leadership, in parliamentarian roles. And then because those leadership position would really help us to make a very inclusive legislations, inclusive policies that really help women to mobilize in all these sectors of national growth and development. The next thing what we are looking at the challenges in addressing the SDG 5. If you go to the next slide, we still feel the violence against women, that has something which is deeply pervasive in Indian context. We have a greater gaps and disparity in terms of the economic independence also. We have, when we talk about the how many women, females there in the corporate, in the boardrooms, despite of having the special provisions of the women directors, what has been their plight as a women directors in terms of actual participation in the decision making process is something which is a great area of concern. And then the child marriage, and specifically the female child marriage, is still pervasive in some of the parts of India, which really hampers their growth. And access to mobile technology has substantially improved in India also and globally also. But despite of these uh, mobile access, the other part of the internet access is something which is still area that requires an improvement. So if you go to the next slides, we have different agencies which has given a mandate to us. The UNDP has given a mandate. Uh, the SDG 23 has 2030 has given a mandate. We have a gender equality strategy report that also gives us some amount of mandate to eliminate gender disparity. And then when we talk about the gender disparity and the impact of COVID, that was something which was greatly disturbing, because almost 92 percent employed, that was something, those who have lost the job, 92% were the females who has lost his job. If we go to the next slides, I just would like to discuss about the uh, this is something I'll share this PPT with all of you. Due to time constraint, I have to go and attend one meeting which is unavoidable, so I'm little in hurry. If you go to the next slides, it talk about recently the Times Group. The Times Higher Education Impact Ranking is something which is very, very innovative according to me. We have three kind of a ranking, as we all know. We have QS ranking, we have Shanghai ranking, and we have a Times Group ranking, which is a global ranking for all the universities. Now, if you look at the Times Education Impact Ranking, which talks about which universities is taking the kind of an initiative with reference to realization of the goals of SDG, and that includes one of the goal is gender equality goal of SDG 5. So there are some of the universities who are really performing quite well with reference to the women participation for the research grant, female participation with reference to the enrollment ratio, female participation on the leadership position, female participation in getting the degree, the final convocating degree. So in compared to male, this having specialized this kind of an impact ranking, which definitely lead uh, your university to take up a special measures for the female. Because I still remember when I was informally talking with one of the universities who has been notified as an institution of eminence, they were working very hard to ensure that case में 50% is something which we have to have a gender as a leadership role. So we have to ensure that at least all our department should have a female HOD. Then only we would be able to, or the recruitment officers, or the registrar, or the finance officers. So all the officers, the decision making authority, at least 50% of the other female, then only we'll be able to get that marks or a ranking. then only we'll be getting a declaration of the university of, I mean, institution of eminence. So likewise, this kind of an impact ranking is what I have seen for the last couple of years is greatly influencing the universities worldwide to take up a special measures for all SDG and especially SDG 5. If you go to the next slide, which I already discussed, I think it's all about the key indicators. So this I already discussed about this thing, so I'm not going to discuss this. If you go to the next slide, leading countries in gender equality. Yes, this is something. Who has realized the SDG 5 in its true sense? So Sweden is something which has a high female political representation and equal parental leave policies, which really make them much ahead than other countries. So if you look at the SDG report of 2023, SDG in performance report of all the countries, these countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, New Zealand, these are doing quite well in all the performance indicators that we have seen on the previous slides. And the worst ranking, if you see, Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Pakistan, these are the countries which are performing very poorly. Now, if you look at the India in the next slide, if you can go to the next slide. So this is the figure. This is how the SDG report looks like. All these. If you look at all these figure. So for SDG 5, this all the orange dot is the significant challenges still remain. And if you have the green arrow, meaning thereby you are on track, meaning thereby you are performing, you are walking, you are progressing in the track. And if it is a green dot, it will say that you have already achieved this thing. So you can see India with reference to goal 5. Just see, it is a red dot. What is a red dot indicate? Significant challenges still remain. We are not on the progressive, we are not even the path of progression. We are still facing that challenges with reference to goal 5. So this is something which uh, we have to understand. Uh, if you go to further dissection of this report, come to the next slide. Uh, if you this India's performance against the SDG 5. So demand for family planning satisfied by modern methods. Of course, we are on the path of progression. So when it comes to the reproductive rights, we have seen one of these target is reproductive rights. Yes, in the reproductive rights, we are progressing. In the area of ratio of female to male mean years of education received, yes, we are progressing. But when it comes to ratio female to male labor force participation, there are still a significant challenge that remains. Seats held by the women in national parliaments, we are still not progressing. There's still the challenge. We are still having that challenge greatly. So this is the India's performance in the last SDG report. If you go to the next slide, this is something which is very interesting. I urge all of you who are interested in the gender issues, read the Gender Equality Index report. We have two kind of an indexes: Gender Equality Index and Gender Inequality Index. And both the indexes are very interesting to read and go through this thing. So Gender Equality Index is a tool to measure the progress of gender equality in several areas of economic, social life in European Union and all the other member states. And these are the summarized into hierarchical structure of domains and subdomains. So there are around 31 indicators in the range of, and then they are in the range of 1 to 100. So 100 is something which is gender equal society, and 1 is something which gender grossly unequal society. So I would suggest all of you to read this Gender Equality Index report, and you will get very different kind of interesting insights into this thing. The next is, if you go to the in Gender Equality Index, there are the Gender Equality Index is a composite measure wherein we are talking about work, money, knowledge, time, power, health. These are the 6 criteria that makes this total index. And each 6 domains have a further subdomains. I've not described all the subdomains over here, but the 6 main domains are work, money, knowledge, time, power, and health. If you go to the next slide, the top ranking countries again in the gender equality is, if you look at the SDG report, SDG 5 maybe, SDG report may be Sweden, Denmark, France, Finland, Netherlands था. Of course यहाँ पे Iceland नहीं है, जो वहाँ पे था, Norway वहाँ पे SDG में था, it's not over here. So because these are the 6 criteria are different and the SDG का 5 criteria are different. So Sweden, Denmark, France, Finland, these are the most gender equal nations, and they have the corresponding scores are also mentioned over here. Now what are the success stories, or what are the strategies? So why they are performing so well? Because of the policy support, comprehensive gender equality policy, work-life balance, generous parental leave, flexible working conditions, childcare support, political representation, high level of female representation in political and economic decision making, and education and health. So these are the main parameters and main factors which will help, that really help country to progress on the path of gender equality. If you go to the next slide, which talks about gender inequality index, the gender inequality index, which is famously known as GII index, which is a measurement of gender disparity that was introduced in 2020 in the Human Development Report. When the first time the HDI had come, we discussed by the UNDP that GII was introduced, and GII measures the gender disparities in the human development process, the entire human development process across the various parameters for the gender inequalities: reproductive health, empowerment, and labor market participation. Here, basically, there are 3 major criteria on the basis of which the gender inequality is being decided. And what we need for all the 3 criteria, what we need is the policy intervention in all the countries. So if you look at if you go to the next slide, please. Reproductive health. So we need a maternal mortality ratio. India, we will discuss the gender equality index of India as well. The maternal mortality ratio, we need a special policies and intervention. Adolescent birth rate. Second is an empowerment with reference to the parliamentary seat and education attainment. So here also the education attainment includes the elementary education ratio and the gross enrollment ratio in the higher education segment, and then the greater participation in the skilled workforce, and then comes the greater participation in the education market or the education field. So these are the dimensions and the indicators of gender inequality index. If you come to the next slide, how they all are interlinked. This is the figure for the interlinkages to decide the gender inequality index. Now, if you look at the top ranking countries in gender inequality, here, it would be very surprising. Gender equality में top ranking जो होगा जिसका value सबसे कम होगा. Like gender equality is very minimal in Switzerland, which is 0.025. So this is a top country. They are the least unequal, and the highest unequal country is Yemen, which has 0.834. So likewise, Switzerland, Norway, Finland. So those who are there in the equality would be, gender equality index, they are also there in the gender inequality in terms of the low ranking countries. I hope you get my point, which I'm trying to point out over here. So when we talk about top ranking countries in gender inequality, means those we have a least score of gender inequality, they are top ranking. That's what I mean to say over here. Now look at the India's ranking in this. Now India's ranking with reference to the maternal mortality ratio is 4.98 death over 1 lakh live births, which is quite high. The adolescent birth rate. Then if you look at the shares of the seats in the parliament, it's minus 84.5.3% gender gap. If you look at the population with the least some secondary education, it is minus 14.3%. Labor force participation is minus 46.7. So this is our performance with reference to the. So India's rank is 108, and our score is 0.437 as per the Gender Inequality Index of 2022. Now, there is another point which I want to discuss over here is that Global Gender Gap Index, which is a recent phenomena. Now, the Global Gender Gap Index is an annual report which is again published by WEF, as I discussed earlier, and this is basically prepared and published to give an comprehensive overview of the gender disparities for all the countries, as I discussed. And this is also based on the four parameters: health and survival, political empowerment, education attainment, and economic participation and opportunity. So now the question comes for us that how to improve gender equality. If you come to the next slide, there is one other slide. Yeah, how to improve gender equality. The three things which is required: economic participation, education attainment, health and survival, as per the Global Gender Gap Index. If you look at the GII, Gender Inequality Index, what we have to work on: health, empowerment, and labor market participation. Most of the things are quite common when it comes to the health and safety, economic empowerment, and education, which are the three basic things. Health, economic empowerment, and education is something which is common in all the three indexes, wherein the thrust is on these three areas. Once you have an education attainment, naturally you will get an awareness, so you will get a better economic empowerment. You will be able to generate the empowering processes to generate more economic opportunity for the female. Once you are educated and education attainment is there, you will be considered for the better decision making roles. So all are quite interlinked with reference to this. Now I just would like to discuss the case studies, which is from the United Kingdom. If you go to the next slides. So there are 10 principles which are known as an Athena or a Swan Charter. Now, what happened in this, that this particular Athena Charter was established in the United Kingdom in 2005. And basically, the idea behind having this charter is to encourage and recognize the commitment to advance the careers of women in science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, all these STEM related program. So, what they have done, so that what we have to do, we have to ensure that whenever there is a female child, female student coming for the this STEM education, we need to monitor their progress. There should be a continuous improvement. We need to enhance their engagement and participation in the entire co-curricular, extracurricular activity. Wherever they are performing better, we need to recognize, and we need to provide some reward. We need to promote good practices from the other countries also. We need to ensure, as a part of the government policy initiative, we need to ensure that they are not so much overburdened at home, so that they are not being able to perform better in the education sphere. So work life balance. So these various initiatives that has been taken as a part of the Athena Charter in the United Kingdom. And because of this, what result that has been yielded is something which is I discuss in the next slide. Please come to the next slide. So what we need basically for this, as a part of the Athena Charter, they said the institutional commitment, the award system, the action plans, the cultural change, because there are so many things which are deeply rooted in our psyche. कि ऐसा तो हो ही नहीं सकता, ऐसा तो होगा ही नहीं. So the kind of a cultural shift and the mind shift which is required to introduce any new changes in the policy regime is something which is important. And data driven approach, this is something which I really would like to emphasize. Most of us, our decision making processes in the education sector and otherwise also is not based on some kind of a data analytics. Most of the times it is based on our assumption, presumptions, and our own understanding which is not fully backed by some scientific analysis of the data. So as a part of this swan chatter, they said whenever you are introducing any policies, in terms of any decision making process with reference to the gender neutral regime and gender equity regime, you need to have a data driven decision making process. That was something which is very, very impactful with reference to this. And lastly, I just would like to discuss about the other case studies. If you can go to the next slide, the University of Cambridge. This university received a Silver Athena Swan Award for all these efforts which they have done, which I listed in the previous slide, for the promoting gender equality. Initiative that was including was a senior academic promotions committee to ensure gender parity and implementing a comprehensive policy on the flexible working hours for all the females. Uh, Another thing, so the same another case with the University of Edinburgh. So University was Edinburgh was also awarded with this Athena Gold Award because the university has been a leader in promotion gender equality in the STEM disciplines, and their initiative that includes targeted support for early career researcher grant, focusing on reducing the gender pay gap. So all these kind of policies which they have consciously introduced based upon the data analytics, and then nurture those decisions. Nurturing the decisions is very important. At times we take the decisions, but then it's not been implemented wholeheartedly. At the times it just half-heartedly being executed without having proper nurturing and monitoring, which really hampers the entire ecosystem of the performance. So these are the Athena report. We also have UGC has also tried to initiate some policies, but then at the end of the day, we all know that how serious the education institutions are observing all the regulatory regime. So what I with this presentation, what I was trying to put forth my viewpoint was that how do we, even as a small university, at the university level, how do we promote how do we promote the database decision making process so that the appropriate policies for gender equity can be introduced in the universities, can be monitored, and then can further being and what happens in most of the times in the Indian universities, that we do not wait for some amount of time to see the result, to yield the result. We really want at times a instant result and instant outcome, which at times doesn't happen with these kind of issues, because all these issues are interconnected and entangled with various economic, social, and cultural aspects. So what we need patience, we need a firm belief in our policy which we are making based upon our data and based upon our lofty ideas of having a gender neutral and gender equal society. So with this, I end my talk. And if you have any queries and any questions, please feel free.
Perfect. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful insight with, I would say, data-driven and then facts and figures from the various reports and initiative done across India, or sorry, across country, I would say. So any participant, any questions? So 2, 3 questions we can create because madam has a meeting right now. Yes, any couple of questions we can take up. Please raise your hand. You can unmute yourself and then ask a question. Yes, Gayatri NM, over to you. Gayatri.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, with respect to, I have always this confusion. Gender means male or a female. Why this third gender? Either it should be male or a female. What is this concept of third gender? So even the transgender, gender is in general, wherever, whichever, the law, wherever you see, male or a female. Why this third gender?
I would like to say that there is a greater amount of difference between male, female, and gender. So, male, female is a sex, and there is a difference between sex and gender. So I just would like to give example. Someone could be a biologically, the sex biologically may be a male, but he completely thinks like a female. That's the reason the first slide what I said is gender is a social construct, is not the nature. It is the nurture who decides the gender. So gender is a social phenomena. It's not a biological phenomena. Sex is a biological. So you are a male sex, you're a female sex, which is male and female is a sexes. Gender is a social construct, and that's the reason that we have, as I said in the very first slide, that we are going to now we are having 25 kinds of an options in the gender. I decide to be, I biologically I may be a female, but I consider myself as a male, as a gender. That is all kind of a possibility, because how do I look at myself socially, economically, culturally, in terms of my opportunity, in terms of my weaknesses, and this is how I decide myself, as I decide to be considered myself as which gender. And that's the reason that today, I mean, nowadays you must have seen in all the social media handles also, though my name could be Gayatri, my name could be Purvi, but I consider myself to be written as, referred as she or her, or referred. I may be Purvi, but I may decide myself to be referred as he or him. That's my option. That's my choice, because this is how I look at it. Like I always remember Professor Bakshi used to tell a number of times that, though he is a man, but he always thinks like a woman, because there is always a female that resides into his thoughts. So that's all about social. Gender is a social construct, it's not a natural construct.
Yeah.
I
Thank
hope
you.
Thank
I
you.
am able to respond to your query.
Yes, ma'am. But yes, ma'am, I understand. But
Thank you.
when a transgender, when he changes his name or he changes her name, then again their gender or sex considers to be male or a female. Why again? I
That's what
don't
I
know.
said.
I'm
Even
also,
no need to change. Even if you're doing the sex change, why you need to change your name? I may be a Purvi and I still remain a male. You may be Kalpesh, and if he decides to be still remain as a female, Kalpesh could be male also. Kalpesh could be female also. What is there in a name that we need to remind sex clear? What is there in a name? Is what we believe Kalpesh is a male or a Purvi is a female. It could be anything. I may be Purvi, but I may be a male also. So it no, I mean, they are doing this change of the name also just to, for the societal needs. But if they want to be considered as with their own original name, no one can stop them. No law says that Purvi cannot be male. Purvi can be a male also. And we have so many gender neutral names nowadays. I've seen, now today is the day, I mean, this is an era wherein we are entering into the gender neutral fashion also. We have a gender neutral t-shirt, gender neutral all these outfits, gender neutral. uh, Now the education institutions, I have been very surprised to listen, which is very revolutionary for a country like India. We are saying that what is this female hostel and the girls hostel and the boys hostel? They're asking for the gender neutral hostel. Why need to have a separate males and females? If they decide they're adult, they decide to. So there are so many such kind of a transforming phase with which the world and India is also passing through.
And then, like some of the institutions, they have set up like gender neutral toilets.
Yes,
So that's
yes,
an
yes,
example they
yes,
are setting up.
yes, yes.
So any other question? Last one question we can take up. Anyone? You can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. Mihika Sara, over to you. This is the last question because madam has a meeting time. Mihika.
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Mihika. So, ma'am, you mentioned that there is a gender gap and it's pervasive across all. I mean, whether be it institutions or workplace, anything. But always, one counter argument is surmounting that there is no enough workforce available in the female workforce. Like female workforce in the society is not available that we recruit them. I mean, we are providing the equal opportunity to them to apply to prestigious positions or anything, but the workforce isn't available. So how would you like to respond to it, ma'am?
workforce in terms of the trained workforce of the female category not available?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's the reason everything starts with the education. So you have to start, first of all. So it's like a pyramid. If you really want to have a gender equality in the society, the first and the foremost steps is to increase the gender enrollment, female girl child enrollment ratio at the primary level first. So when can we achieve the 100% of the girls in this country getting at least the elementary education? मतलब up to 14 years जो compulsory है, whether every one of them are getting the elementary education. That is the first target. From that target we have to see to it that how many of this girl child is getting at, into the higher education segment, the secondary education and the higher education segment. So what is the gross enrollment ratio in the colleges and the universities? And then, because everything starts with the education, everything starts with the education, skill, training. So for all our efforts are to be there with reference to this. Now what are the hindrances of from educating the girl child? As I said, the violence against women. So if there is n number of even the rural urban areas, the low middle class and the lower class, the lower income group people still face a lot of violence issues that really hampers the girl child to go to to go to the school. We have seen so many such cases, and if you look at the statistics, they says that the 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 labor force, where women are working, if they have the girl child, so generally the girl child is being kept to take care of their younger siblings, and those girl child can never go to the school. So these are, entangled and complex social issues, social economic issues, which really hampers the girl enrollment in the schools and colleges. So first of all, we have to work upon those agenda. Those are the first targets that we have to achieve. Once they are getting educated, then we get more number of educated girl students, girl female employees, I mean female candidates for different jobs.
Understood, ma'am. I mean, inherent challenges exist within the society itself that uh, girls have to take care of the household and all. And as you said, we have to increase the elementary education rate as much as possible. Thank you,
Yes.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we should end here. Otherwise, it will take more half an hour in our meeting. So, on behalf of organizing committee, we are grateful for you, madam, for your insightful session, and we could see a lot of the insight we have received, and I hope all the participants, from the various institutions from across the India would have benefited and try to implement whatever have been insight that we have received from various report and ma'am's words of wisdom. So ma'am, look forward to seeing future events, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Mona, thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Mariam, and the other participants for joining. Yeah. Look forward to seeing tomorrow's session. Thank you.
Thank you, participants. Thank you, sir.